Imagine a steel leviathan over 2.5 football fields long, 269 meters. In the spring of 1912, the air around the shipyard in Belfast smelled of fresh paint, coal, and ambition. The Titanic was not just a ship. It was a microcosm of the society of that time, divided into rigid classes that had different prices on life. The wealthiest people in the world bought exclusive parlor suites with private promenades for an astronomical 870 pounds sterling. Today, that is over $115,000 for a single ticket. For this money, the elite drank vintage champagne, visited Turkish baths, and played squash, while deep below them, stokers shoveled coal into red-hot furnaces. A standard first-class ticket cost the equivalent of a modern $4,000. Second-class passengers, about $1,600 by today's standards, enjoyed a level of comfort that on other ships would have been considered a luxury. And deep below, in the third class, thousands of Irish, Swedish, and Syrian immigrants gave their last savings, from $400 to $1,100 modern dollars, for a chance at a new life in America. Their journey was not a straight line. It was a route that step by step gathered souls across Europe. At noon on April 10th, the ship departed from Southampton, England, and the start immediately proved ominous. The colossal mass of water displaced by the Titanic's propellers nearly sucked the neighboring liner New York underneath it. A collision was narrowly avoided by a miracle, and the ship finally headed out to sea. On the evening of that same day, April 10th, the ship stopped near Cherbourg, France. The liner was so massive that it could not enter the port, so passengers were ferried by small tenders. It was here that true aristocracy boarded, millionaires John Jacob Astor and Benjamin Guggenheim. On the morning of April 11th, the final stop took place in Queenstown, Ireland. Hundreds of poor third-class immigrants boarded. At 1:30 p.m., the Titanic raised its anchor for the last time, left the European shores, and set course for New York. It was meant to arrive there triumphantly on the morning of April 17th, but the ocean had other plans. Let us fast forward 100 years, the year 2012. Seafaring had changed drastically. Ocean crossings ceased to be a struggle for survival or a search for a new life. They became mass entertainment. The liner Costa Concordia was 2.5 times more massive than the Titanic, over 114,000 tons. It was a Las Vegas on the water. 13 passenger decks, 4 pools, a giant spa center, a 3-story theater, and a casino where the blinding neon lights never turned off. Here, there was no class divide. A week-long cruise in an interior cabin cost only 500 to 700 euros, making it affordable for an ordinary family or retirees. A balcony cabin cost around 1,500 euros, while luxury suites ranged from 3,000 to 5,000 euros. Yet, they all strolled the same decks, watched the same shows, and, as it turned out, had an equal chance of looking death in the eye. Modern cruises travel in circles, picking up tourists every day in a new port. That week-long cruise was named Scent of Citrus. Friday, January 13th, Civitavecchia, Italy. At 7:18 p.m., the liner unmoored. For many, it was the first night of their vacation. They were dining, drinking wine, and watching magic shows. They were supposed to wake up in Savona, then sail to Marseille, France, Barcelona, Palma de Mallorca, and return to Rome via the islands. The ship was simply supposed to follow a safe, computerized course. But it did not even make it to its first stop. Both tragedies occurred at night when most passengers were sleeping or relaxing after dinner. Both happened under ideal weather conditions, in calm waters, without storms, hurricanes, or giant rogue waves. It seemed as if nature itself had frozen, watching what would happen next. In such moments, the ocean looks like a safe, almost domestic lake, lulling the crew's vigilance. But it was precisely this deceptive silence that became the backdrop for disasters, where how metal lost its battle to the elements, was dictated by entirely different laws of physics and engineering miscalculations. At 11:40 p.m., an ice monolith emerged from the darkness, absolutely silently. The impact was not head-on. The iceberg nearly scraped the starboard side. For many passengers, it felt like a slight shudder, as if the ship had simply rolled over a large pothole. But underwater, the steel, which had become brittle in the freezing temperatures, deformed. Rivets popped off with the sound of gunshots. Thin slits formed, totaling slightly more than 1 square meter in area. However, these slits stretched for 90 meters. Water rushed inside at a rate of 7 tons per second, flooding 5 forward compartments at once. The engineering trap of the Titanic was that its watertight bulkheads were not sealed at the top. They only reached Deck E. Imagine an ice cube tray. When the ship's bow began dragging it down, the water simply spilled over the walls from one compartment into the next. The ship sank slowly, steadily on an even keel. This process lasted 2 hours and 40 minutes. The lights stayed on almost to the very end, giving people a terrifying illusion of hope. With the Concordia, everything was different. It was not a natural cataclysm that killed it, but human bravado. Captain Francesco Schettino ordered a deviation from the safe course to approach the island of Giglio and perform an incino, a greeting siren for the residents. He steered the 290-meter giant visually, in the dark, at a speed of 15 knots, nearly 30 kilometers per hour. When the ship impaled itself on the underwater granite reef of Lascaux, it was not a light shudder. It was the deafening screech of tearing metal. The rock left a 53-meter-long gash in the port side, and a massive chunk of granite became lodged directly in the hull. Water instantly flooded the engine room and generators. In a matter of seconds, the floating city that had been glowing with lights plunged into absolute darkness. A blackout occurred. The engines stopped. And here, a different kind of physics came into play. Modern liners have enormous height. They are like multi-story buildings on the water. When thousands of tons of water rushed in from only the port side and the ship lost its steering, the wind and currents spun it around. The immense mass of water forced the liner to list sharply. It did not go down by the bow like the Titanic. It inevitably toppled onto its side, turning corridors into vertical death shafts and restaurant floors into an abyss where people fell alongside tables and shattered dishes. When engineering fails, the only thing standing between the life and death of hundreds of people is the character of those on the captain's bridge. The evacuation became the most striking contrast between these two tragedies. On the Titanic, there was a catastrophic mathematical problem. There were only enough lifeboats for 1,178 people, while over 2,200 were on board. When Captain Edward Smith learned that the ship was doomed, he realized his horrific mistake, but maintained iron discipline. The order was given: women and children first. Millionaires in tuxedos, the most influential men of their time, stood silently on the freezing deck listening to the orchestra play, and humbly accepted their death, giving up their seats to the poor from the third class. Captain Smith went down with his ship. That night, the ocean claimed about 1,500 lives, leaving them to freeze under the indifferent light of the stars. On the Costa Concordia, there were absolutely enough lifeboats for everyone, but because the ship listed sharply onto its side, lowering the lifeboats from the port side became physically impossible. They hung suspended over the deck. The list reached 40 and then 70 degrees. In impenetrable darkness, panicked passengers scrambled up walls that had become the floor. But the most terrifying thing was not the ship's list. The most terrifying thing was the betrayal. Captain Francesco Schettino lied to the Coast Guard for almost an hour, claiming the ship only had a blackout. The abandoned ship alarm was sounded too late, and then the captain simply fled. He jumped into a lifeboat among the first, leaving 4,200 people to their fate in the labyrinths of the sinking giant. The intercepted radio transmission of his conversation with the head of the Coast Guard, Admiral Gregorio de Falco, went down in history as a symbol of disgrace. When the admiral shouted at him, "Get back on board, damn it! You are the captain! You must coordinate the rescue!" Schettino refused, complaining that it was dark and slippery there. It was only because the ship tilted almost right next to the shore that massive casualties were avoided. Yet, 32 people suffocated in the water, trapped in dark corridors and elevator shafts. Both giants went down in history as monuments to human overconfidence, but their physical paths post-disaster diverged. The Titanic remained forever at the site of its demise. Its wreckage lies in total darkness at a colossal depth, 3,800 meters at the bottom of the North Atlantic, about 600 kilometers from the Canadian island of Newfoundland. The pressure there is about 380 atmospheres, and bacteria are slowly consuming the steel, causing the ship to gradually disappear. Nevertheless, human curiosity about this tomb does not fade, leading to new casualties. Just in June 2023, the world was shaken by another tragedy at this very spot. The private submersible Titan, with 5 tourists on board, who had paid exorbitant amounts of money just to see the legendary liner through a porthole, suffered an implosion, instantaneous destruction from pressure, a few hundred meters from the Titanic. All of them died in a fraction of a second. The fate of the Costa Concordia was different. Italian authorities and environmentalists could not leave a 300-meter reinforced concrete monster lying on its side in the protected waters of the resort island of Giglio. An unprecedented engineering operation was launched. Using massive steel caissons and hydraulic jacks, the ship was first righted, then refloated, and in July 2014 towed to the port of Genoa for dismantling. There, the liner was completely scrapped over the course of several years. This unique salvage mission became the most expensive in maritime history. The raising and disposal of the Costa Concordia cost an incredible 1.2 billion euros, and the total losses, including the value of the ship itself, exceeded $2 billion. A century has passed. We have transitioned from coal to satellite systems. We build ships that surpass some cities in size. But comparing the cold agony of the Titanic with the shameful fall of the Costa Concordia, one realization brings chills. Water remains just as ruthless as it was millions of years ago. In 1912, the ocean punished humanity for its blind faith in the unsinkability of steel, and in 2012, for recklessness and cowardice. Whether the wreckage lies at an unreachable depth or is cut into scrap metal in docks, both giants prove one ironclad rule. The moment a person on the captain's bridge decides they are stronger than the elements, they have already lost their most important battle.